Hey Jewel School, thank you for being here with me today. So we're doing a pair of earrings today. We're using Larvikite and Opalite and some little black spinel to make this kind of simple, but it's got a little pizzazz to it, earring, kind of highlighting all the coolness and all those gemstones. So that's what we're doing today. So let's talk about this earring. Another thing that I've got in the show that I didn't talk about before is this bare gold wire set. And we're using 3 different wire gauges from that set. So it's an incredible set of wire. I love the bare gold wire. So we're using the bare gold wire, and then we're using the Larvikite. Larvikite is such a cool stone. It's got almost like a Dalmatian effect to it, but it's also got a labradorite, little labradorite in it. So you get some flash, but you get the black speckling in there. It's such a cool stone, and I just can't say enough about this trapezoid shape. It's not something that we see very often, so when I have a shape like that, I'm gonna figure out a way to use it. And then we are using the Opalite. Tool-wise, I've got your chain nose pliers, your round nose pliers, your flush cutters, and then our 6-step bell shaping plier to make our ear wire. For the bulk of the earring, we're going to be using our 26 and our 22 gauge from that bare gold wire set. And then for the ear wire, we are going to use 20 gauge. You can make your ear wire out of 22 gauge if you want. All right, let's get going. The first thing that we are going to do, so this is kind of like a little bit different than I've done this style of earring before, or this style of wrapping. So I wanted to make that that wrapped kind of coiled section down at the bottom a little chunkier. But I couldn't fit 2 pieces of my 22 gauge through the hole in the Larvikite. So I got 1 piece of 22 gauge and then 1 piece of 26 gauge, which we're gonna use for the upper part of the earring. So I'm gonna cut a couple inches of both of those. And then we are going to pick out our piece of Larvikite, and we're going to put both of these through the hole. Pull those through. It's pretty tight with both of those. So I tried to fit 2 pieces of 22 gauge. And I tried to do 22 and 24, but I just couldn't. If you've got a bead reamer and you want to ream that hole out and use a bigger wire up top, you're welcome to do that. Okay, so I've got my 22 gauge below and my 26 gauge up top. So we're gonna go ahead and make our top section before we do our coiling down there with the coil. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna crisscross this 26 gauge wire, and I just wanna make sure I'm coming up over the top of the shoulders of this trapezoid shape so that my loop is not kind of hanging down in front or behind my Larvikite. I wanna make that bend right there at the corners so that my coil, or the top part of the earrings comes up directly out of the top of that Larvikite. So then I'll grab my chain nose pliers, and right in the middle, I'm just gonna pick one of these wires, one of these 20 pieces of 26 gauge, and right in the middle, I'm gonna bend that wire up straight like that. And then we'll take the other piece of our 26 gauge, and we're gonna wrap it around that piece of wire. And I just made myself a little bit, kind of a chunkier little coil down here, just to bulk that up just a little bit. So I'm not worried about keeping it super neat. Kind of got off the shoulder a little bit, so I'm just gonna pull that up, kind of tighten it a little bit with my pliers, and then we'll trim that little tail off. And then we've just got, I'm gonna tuck that little tail in. So now we've just got this one wire sticking up here out of the top, and we're gonna string our spinel and our opalite. So you can adjust this ratio however you want, and you can use a different combination of beads if you want. I did a spinel and then 5 of my little Larvikite Heshy beads. I mean, not Larvikite, Opalite beads. I didn't want these to get too long, so I just kept it kind of simple and short. And then I did another spinel on top of that just to kind of cap that off. When I'm using Heshy beads, if I'm doing an earring or anything that's gonna require a wrap, I usually try to kind of cap it off with a rounder bead. It can be kind of awkward to make a loop on top of that real flat surface there, kind of like it was a little bit awkward to make it above the Larvikite. So one way to kind of eliminate that is to kind of cap them off with something round that has a little bit of a rounder edge, just to smooth out that transition a little bit. So then we'll just make a loop up here at the top with our round nose pliers. And this is going to be a closed loop because this is 26 gauge wire. So I really, for security reasons, I want to finish this off, close the loop off with my coils. That way I don't have to worry about my loop opening up when I'm wearing my earrings. And we'll snip that little piece of our tail off. Make sure we're tucking those tails in, getting this earring nice and clean. All right. So if you like it like that, you can leave it like that. I wanted to kind of jazz it up a little bit, so that's why I went with the kind of coiling with my 22 gauge wire. So I'm just gonna start wrapping around my Larvikite. And I just kept it kind of loose and messy and not worried about it looking real nice and neat. And then I'm gonna come the other way with the other side and get a nice chunky wrap there. And you can minimize this coil and kind of simplify it a little bit if you don't want it as bulky. Just do a couple wraps. And then I just want to go in and make sure that my tails are tucked in the back with my pliers. So I'm just kind of pushing those ends so that they're hidden underneath the other pieces of wire. Make sure that tail's tucked in there. Isn't that cool? I just think I don't know, it just it kind of breaks up that big flat surface on that Larvikite trapezoid. Even though I think it's cool, I just felt like it needed a little something else. It needed a little pop of metallic there down at the bottom, just to bring it to life a little bit. But obviously, if you want to keep it simple, you don't have to do the spiraling. And then I'm going to grab my 20 gauge here. We will make an ear wire real quick. You guys have seen me do this so many times, but we're gonna just keep doing it over and over again. This is how I rarely use, pre-made ear wires, mostly because, well, for a couple reasons. One, I can never find them, but two, I'm really big about my metals matching. The colors of my metal matching. It's one thing if I'm mixing metals and I'm using a silver tone and a gold tone, that's fine. But if I'm using a gold tone, I want all my gold tones to be the same. I think that really elevates the look and gives it a look of professionalism that you would lose if you had a gold that was, more of a soft gold, and then you had a real brassy gold. This wire has a softer tone to it, this bare gold wire. Sometimes you'll get, ear wires in findings that have a higher yellow content in them, and so it's a real stark contrast. Like you can see the difference even in my ring, in the two different tones of metal, of gold there. And so when they're paired, you know, it's one thing if you've got a bracelet that's got more yellow and earrings that have, like, you know, a dustier, lighter tone, but if they're on the same piece of jewelry, I want them to match. That way, it just looks like you've thought the whole thing out, from your beads to your findings and all the way through. So that's my spiel about why I usually make my own ear wires. So I'm using 20 gauge. I'm gonna grab my 6-step bale shaping plier here, and we're gonna grab right at the very tip of the wire there. We're just gonna roll that into a loop, and then we're gonna flip our plier around, and we're gonna use the biggest step on the plier. So I've got my loop butted up real tight up against the bottom of the plier, and then we're gonna come around that biggest step here, just give it a swoop. And then you've got a really easy shepherd's hook ear wire. And then we'll just trim that off. So you want to work hard in this with your rawhide mallet and your bench block, and then you want to soften the end of your ear wire with either a file or your reaming tool. Your reaming tool comes with a little cut burr attachment that you can put on there, and you can use that to round off the end of your wire. But this is really jagged and sharp right there on the end, and so you want to soften that up a little bit. So sandpaper, a file, or your cut burr on your reaming tool. Next, we'll just open that loop up with our pliers, and we will drop our earring on. Close that up, and we're done. Put that on there next to our other earring. I think they're really elegant. They have a really elegant feel to them. I love the black and white together, that combo. Hey guys, thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed today's demo. If you need any of the tools and supplies that we used today, check out the links in the description below. And while you're down there, I want to know what your favorite funky shape is to use in your jewelry. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss any future videos. Bye y'all.